All right, thank you, Ed. I'm Roseanne Cook, one of the founders and facilitators of Potluck Insurgency. I'd like to welcome all the candidates and their dedicated staff members here tonight. We are really thrilled to have you. And obviously a lot of people wanted to come and hear you, so I hope you're impressed by that. I also want to thank all of our attendees. We love it that you're here. I saw many familiar faces checking in and also some folks who haven't been with us before. So I'd like to take just a quick moment to tell you a little bit about Potluck Insurgency and how you can get on our mailing list if you would like to be on there. We started shortly after the election of Donald Trump. When we got together, and some of us who had been working on GOTV before the 2016 election got together and started thinking about, oh, this is going to be so bad. And of course, it was much worse than we even ever dreamed it would be. So we thought, well, let's get some people together and see if there's anything we can do to mitigate the horrible things that we anticipate. Our first potluck in January of 2017, and we developed a mission which was pretty broad. Our mission is to help elect Democratic candidates at the local, state, and national level, and to discuss the policies of the Democratic Party. So that fairly broad mission has allowed us to do a number of things over the last 5 years. We have done meet and greets for candidates like tonight's event. We've done a number of fundraisers. We've hosted many presidential candidates. We've also had meetings where we've talked about various issues like, voters' rights and reproductive rights, gun control, climate change, and, so on and on. So we've done a lot of things over the last 5 years. And every time I think, oh, probably our time is up, we're just a little grassroots group, then we start thinking, oh no, there's more work to be done. We've got to hang in there. Things are not getting better yet. So we need to keep going. So that's, where we are tonight. I'd like to acknowledge our steering committee, some people who work together very well. Ed and Jane Cranston, of course, Janice Weiner, Sarah Prinius, Jackie Blank, Emily Sellerman, and me, Roseanne Cook. If you would like to be, if you're new with us tonight and you'd like to be on our mailing list, I'll put my email in chat, or you can just let me know in chat that you want to be on the mailing list. I have your email address since you signed up for the Zoom tonight, so you don't need to give me your email address, but just pop something in chat saying, oh, I'd like to be on your list, and I'll make sure you get on there. Or again, you can email me and I'll stick my email in chat in a couple of minutes here. Our plan for tonight is the following. Each candidate is going to make an opening statement, and we'll do that in alphabetical order. So Abby Finkenauer first, and then Admiral Mike Franken, and then Dr. Glenn Hurst. We will then go into Q&A, and Ed Cranston will come back at that point to explain how we're going to do that. And I think our plan is to request questions in chat so that we can keep the questioner time to a minimum and give the candidates as much time as we can to talk. We'll also rotate through each question will be put to all three candidates, and we'll rotate through the three so that the same person doesn't go first all the time. After question and answer, we'll have brief closing statements. And then at the end, Jane will come back for a moment with a brief message and tell you a little bit about our next event. We plan to conclude by 7:40 at the latest. We don't like to run, especially on Zoom, we don't like to run much more than an hour, so 7:40 at the latest. And if you were here when we started, you know that this is being recorded. Potluck Insurgency has a YouTube channel. So we will put our recording on YouTube, and I'll get that link out to everybody who's on our list in the next day or two after I get it from Ed. Again, welcome. We're so pleased to have you. And I'm going to turn it over to Abby at this point. Thank you, Abby.
Well, hello, everybody. Oh, my goodness. Potluck Insurgency, thank you, thank you, thank you for everything that you do. As somebody who I know benefited from your organization starting out in 2017, just thank you. Thank you for putting this together. And then also, thank you for what you do for candidates across the state. That was something that meant a lot to me as well. All the work you've done for state house candidates, state senate candidates, and just again, thank you, thank you, thank you. The other thing I will say is, hi, yes, obviously I'm in a car. I'm actually, I think right now about 10 minutes away from my home. So the rest of this forum, I will be in a different location. But in the meantime, I just want you to know we are out there. We are talking to Iowans in both our smaller towns and our bigger cities and making sure that they hear our message about why we have to do this and retire Senator Chuck Grassley. The reality is I decided to run for United States Senate because Iowa, our country, and democracy were worth fighting for. And also, folks, because 47 years in Washington, D.C. was just too dang long for anyone. The other thing that was really important to me here, as I watched Senator Grassley, as I watched some of these other senators, heck, even Democrats, including Kirsten Sinema, folks who clearly have forgotten who they were sent there to represent, that I knew we needed to elect a senator from Iowa who will never forget where she comes from and who she fights for. So many of you I have gotten to know over the years. You know my background. You know where I come from. My dad was a union pipe fitter welder. My mom worked for the school district. I was a first generation college grad who was taught early in this state that if you work hard, you should be able to make it. However, I started watching that promise be broken to Iowans across the state and across this country. It is why at the age of 24, I ran for state house and we were able to win that seat. But man, that was where all of a sudden, all of the fights against everything that mattered to us started to happen. You see, it was after 2016 where I was standing on that state house floor when they went after public education, when they went after women in our healthcare, when they went after our environment and working families in this state, in particular collective bargaining, where I knew in that vote that this was not how we treated people in my state or my country. And I was going to do whatever the heck I could to get it back. And so you all know what happens next. I ran for the United States Senate at the age of 28. When a lot of folks thought, how is this young woman going to beat this millionaire who's been there? You know, he just got reelected. How is she going to beat him? And honestly, I didn't know how it was all going to come together, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And I knew that we were more alike than we were different in our cities and in our rural areas. And we had to talk about our values. We had to bring people together. And that's what we did. We got out there, we knocked doors, we talked to each other, and we reminded people who we are as Iowans. And we flipped the seat from red to blue and took back the US House of Representatives. And I'll be frank, I knew that they were coming for me and coming for me early. I knew that they did not want somebody like me there who was willing to stand up and do the work. And so within the first 2 weeks, passed a bill showing up for rural Iowa. Was actually a bipartisan bill, became the youngest woman in history to do so. Then we lowered prescription drug prices for not just our seniors, but every American. We actually fought for the best investment in rural infrastructure and heck, infrastructure that's been fought for in decades in Washington, D.C. We addressed childcare, affordability, accessibility, quality, because all three mattered. Paid family leave, putting us back into the Paris Climate Accords. I mean, you name it, we did it. And yet we had a United States Senate who was so obsessed, including Senator Chuck Grassley, who was so obsessed with holding on to power that he was refusing to do anything to move us forward. And it was in those moments where I knew, obviously, we had to have a United States Senate willing to do the work, willing to get the job done. And then 2020 happened. And I remember thinking to myself after that election, after we got the same percentage of the vote as Congresswoman Axne did in Iowa 3, which got her reelected, after we overperformed our Senate candidate, after we overperformed, our president got more votes than he did in the first, that, oh my goodness, the misinformation was thick, that we didn't talk to each other anymore. And I thought, why does anybody run for public office in this country if they can lie about you and they can win? And I was done. I love public service. I love lifting up voices, but I was never going to run for office again until January 6th happened. And that was the moment when I knew we had to stand up. We had to fight for our democracy. And all of the misinformation that was out there, we had to fight back. And when Chuck Grassley pushed misinformation about the election 2 months after that, after January 6th happened, I knew that that guy did not deserve to be reelected to the United States Senate, and I was going to beat him. And so this race has been one heck of a one so far. I can tell you this, they do not like the contrast between Senator Grassley and I, and they do not like that we are holding him accountable in a way that he has never been before. You see, we are holding him accountable for what he has done that has hurt Iowans, which, by the way, is a lot. If you're sitting on this call and you've got a pre-existing condition, he's voted 12 times to take away your health care, and he'd do it again. But it's also about what he hasn't done. I mean, he walks around this state like he is Mr. Rural America, but we've lost 30,000 families or 30,000 family farms in this state since that man's been in office. And we are going to make him pay for it in 2022. But it's also about the future. And this is, again, why we're excited to chat with you tonight. It is so many things when we talk about the future of Iowa. Who do you want representing you in that United States Senate who's going to fight for you, your grandkids, your children, and make sure that they have a voice who's willing to stand up, do the work, who loves this state, where it's her home, and she's going to fight like hell for it and fight for you every single day. It's about making sure we have a state and a country where, gosh, you don't have to pick between, can I fill my prescription drugs or can I take my grandkids out to dinner? These are the types of things that, again, show up in such a big, big way here. And I know my time is running out, and I will talk about many other things as this continues. But just thank you so much for everything you are doing. We are going to continue to fight like heck because, again, this thing is important to me. You've heard me say it before. These races are personal to me because this is my home. This is my future. And I'm going to make sure I do everything we can to hold Chuck Grassley accountable and bring back dignity and respect to our democracy and to that United States Senate.
Thank you, Abby. I know you have more to say, and you will have an opportunity, I hope, to talk about some of your other ideas when we do the Q&A. So thank you so much. Admiral Mike, you're next, I believe.
Hi, thank you, Roseanne. Thank you to the insurgency. I love this. Good for you all. I want to join. Sign me up to be your loyal sergeant to all of this. So my job is to beat Chuck Grassley and, frankly, to end a generational commitment to backsliding in my Iowa, in our Iowa. I'm a real tough target for the GOP. Born and raised in rural Sioux County, very rural. Think big, big family, small house, real blue collar. Mom was a school teacher. Dad ran a small business where he fixed farm implements coming out of World War II as a wounded vet, grandfather of World War I. It's kind of what we use to express to ourselves that we were Americans and that we were part of the service. And it was also an ability to pay for things like college. It was an extremely bootstrap existence that I'm actually very fond of. All my ancestors were homesteaders, very much committed to this nation called America, but certainly gifted with the nature and the nurture to grab a handful of unending possibilities in the future. I spent almost 4 decades in uniform, leading women and men from across this nation in some of the admittingly trying conditions imaginable. Yet only in America can you go from a pig slaughterhouse where I worked for 3 years to Admiral. And frankly, having the qualifications and the moxie to be the privilege of representing Iowans in the US Senate on day one. This race is very winnable, and it's time because we are the party of progress 2022 style, and not the creaky 1958 Etzel, which I associate with Senator Grassley. I'm also happy to announce that a Change Research poll released last week showed that we are a mere 3 points behind Grassley, 42 to 45. The momentum is with us, and we will outdistance him come next month. We are on the airwaves, we're advertising, we've got the money necessary to go through with this advertisement campaign all the way to November. You will see us on billboards, you will see us in mailings. We are here to win this and certainly leave him in the dust come November. It is time. And I'm the only candidate who can win this general election because I will bring in the independents, I will chip away from the Republicans, and I will certainly energize the Democrats in this state. Ultimately, the demographic which I will be helpful with is also a demographic that our 3 congresswomen who are headed to Washington with me and our new female governor will take to change the entire complexion of the state of Iowa. And I'm very proud to be part of that group. In sending me to the Senate, Iowa will have a bit of notoriety, that being represented by the most senior military officer ever elected to the US Senate. And in the shadow of January 6th, that says volumes about the Democrats versus the far-right Republicans and the insurrectionists in their midst. If you think this is over as a result of January 6th, I do say you're incorrect about that. It is just merely a different take that they're taking now, and it is to clear the voter rolls of those who would vote against them, and also to win by potentially overturning legally cast votes. This is time for strong candidates, and these are serious times. My efforts in the Senate will involve national issues like better health care for all Iowans, the type of health care I had as a military officer and as a military enlisted person, better pre-K to post-high school education options. I'm all about education. It's what sent me forward in life, and my mom's encouraging from her one-room schoolhouse. Expanded job opportunities and a different wage scale, sustainable agriculture that will reward us with cleaner water. I don't want farmers to be villainized by being those that give us dirty water. I want them to be part of this redundant energy grid that comes with a smaller carbon footprint. Mostly, my voting record will reflect a pro-democracy, pro-worker, pro-civil rights platform. And this is possible done hand in hand with a pro-business environment, with a higher wage scale and paid for with a far fair tax code. Permit me to say that my job number one as your leading senator, not the junior senator, your leading senator, is strengthening the Democratic Party from within. In my travels, I've seen this elsewhere in the world where too many Democrats in rural counties look too forlorn, a hopeless gaze that after the shellacking they got from Donald Trump and his cohorts, that were even applauded for this insurrection. I see a collateral duty in reversing this, to grow a generation from within, from county supervisor to school board to state house. I will work diligently to make that happen. A new crop of voters, just like this state did for Barack Obama, who I was his legislative chief for. I look forward to making this country and our neighboring countries blue states. Just like the qualities that make you from a success to an admiral, the qualities for elected office are the same. I challenge you all as we go forth, volunteering to make this work, to be principled, level-headed, logical, and empathetic. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening, and I thank you in advance for signing up everyone to vote in the Democratic primary this June, and thanks also for signing up for frankenforiowa.com. Thank you much. Bye.
Thank you, Admiral. And now we turn to Glenn Hurst.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Potluck Insurgency. You remind me very much of the Indivisible movement on the western side of the state, which is where I'm from. I'll take a moment to introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. I am Dr. Glenn Hurst. I'm a family practice physician in Minden, Iowa, where I live with my wife and my daughter. I became a physician very late in my life. At 32 years old, I went back to school to become a physician because I'd been spending my time traveling around the state of Iowa and Nebraska, working with rural physicians, and discovered that I was just in the wrong office. I wanted to do what they did, which was take care of people and address the healthcare needs of our rural communities. And as a physician, what I've learned is we've got some big impediments to doing that, and it's going to take more than just a doctor in rural Minden. It's going to take a U.S. senator to address that problem. So I'm running for the U.S. Senate as a person who is a city council person in our small community, as a person who has chaired the rural caucus for the Iowa Democratic Party, chaired Cindy Axne's district, getting her reelected to her position in Congress. I have my fingers on the pulse of Iowa, and I know how to win. And I'm running for the U.S. Senate because I want to see Iowa thrive. and we haven't been thriving. We've had a 25% population loss in the last 40 years. We've had 40 hospitals listed as at high risk for closure. They've stopped delivering babies. They have part-time emergency departments. They're cutting staff. They're cutting services. We had 13 nursing homes closed between 2015 and 2019. We have hundreds of bodies of water that are unsafe for human consumption and recreation. We have the second worst bridges in the nation. That's not thriving. And Chuck Grassley has sat on that throne overseeing this failure to thrive for the last 47 years. And it's absolutely time for him to go. If I need to convince this group of that, you might be at the wrong meeting. We are all in agreement that Chuck Grassley needs to go. And we are all the types of Democrats who are going to vote for whatever candidate wins the primary so that we can move them forward. But there's a problem with that. Not everybody outside of this meeting is going to vote in that manner. They're looking for something very specific. They might not be voting at all. And that's what has happened in the Iowa Democratic Party for the last 4 general elections. If you look at the top of the ticket in our last 4 general elections, we've run candidates that have not excited Democrats to get out and vote. We had a vulnerable candidate and a vulnerable opponent in Joni Ernst, and a vulnerable opponent in Kim Reynolds. And yet we couldn't cross the finish line for them because we put forth Democrats that looked more like moderate or Republicans than they looked like solid Democrats. Democrats are not excited to get out and vote for people who are picked for us by Washington, for people who are Washington insiders or career politicians. They are looking for a Democrat who can inspire them and who carries a message of democratic principles. I am that type of Democrat. I'm the only progressive candidate in this race. I'm running solidly on support of Medicare for all as a tool to help our rural communities recover, as well as provide that care to every individual in this nation that we all agree everyone deserves access to. I'm the only candidate that supports the Green New Deal. This is a key piece of legislation that would give us opportunities to expand Iowa from just agriculture to agriculture and energy. And to be a leading force in the green jobs and the green energy production that this nation absolutely requires. The climate is the existential crisis of this nation, and right along with that is our voting rights. And we've got to have a candidate who's going to Washington, D.C. to address those problems directly. That's what inspires rural Democrats. That's what inspires those urban Democrats who have looked at our candidates and gone, it's a choice between the same and the same. We've got to put a progressive candidate forward. And if you're looking for a progressive candidate, I am the progressive Democrat in this race. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak with you about all of these ideas as we move forward. What I would like you to remember is that when Iowa begins having babies in our communities, that's when we can thrive. When Iowa has bodies of water that we can swim in and enjoy, Iowa thrives. When you can eat the fish at the fish fry, even though they came out of Iowa waters, Iowa thrives. When your neighbors bring cultural diversity to your community, Iowa thrives. And when you and I march to Washington, D.C. together, I assure you, I will deliver like Tom Harkin delivered the American with Disabilities Act. I will deliver the Medicare for All Act.
Hi there. I'd like a tenderloin with mustard and onion. And a small potato salad.
Make that 2. Make that 2.
And what was the last one?
Thank you all very much. I look
Thank you,
forward to
Brad. Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, after hearing all 3 of you, all I can say is that I'm more convinced than ever that we have a very difficult decision to make when we vote that primary ballot in June. Oh my goodness, you are all amazing. I'm going to turn this back over to Ed, who will explain how we're going to do question and answer. First, however, Jane just texted me and said I should tell you again how to get on our mailing list. Just let me know in chat who you are and that you want to be on our list. I have your email from your Zoom sign in, or you can email me at roseanne.cook@gmail.com. So again, thanks so much to all 3 of you. And I'm going to give this back to Ed, who will explain our next stage here.
Hey, thanks a lot, Roseanne. Yeah, if you'd like to ask a question, we got a couple ways. One, if you're on a computer, go to the bottom of the screen, click on chat, and just type in a brief question there. Or if you'd like to ask a question, go down to reactions, click on raise hand, and then once you've done that, please give a very, very brief question, and then we'll go ahead. We'll plan on spending 1 to 2 minutes per speaker. So we'll start off with you, Admiral Franken. And I see a question already in the chat here that has moved.
Ed?
And that was from Alan Kay. And it says, do you have any questions on how the US can improve the prospects of ending the war soon in Ukraine and ensuring a just and stable outcome?
Sorry, Ed, that was suggestions. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, thank you for that. I would suggest that there are some specific capabilities that we could usher across the border. I think we should have an international consortium of like-minded nations to do a forcible evacuation of civilians from places like Mariupol. I believe we ought to push in firefinder radars that can distinguish where these inbound rounds are coming from. Matter of fact, that's happening, I think, surreptitiously now. And ultimately, we have the capabilities to post on social media and push via other means to the open web all the commanders, where their units are, what atrocities they're associated with, and let the world know, including like their spouses, what's happening in country. So those 3 measures alone. Ultimately, we also should be considering a Marshall Plan equivalency to help rebuild Ukraine. We need to recall that for every soldier that dies, historically 4 civilians die. For every week in conflicts such as ongoing now, an entire year of infrastructure is destroyed. And for every month in conflict, an entire year of GDP is destroyed. Ukraine is in a position to be a dystopian wasteland unless we call this conflict and call Putin's bluff.
Hey, thank you, Mike. Let's go on over to Glenn Hurst.
Thank you. That's a great question. What we need to be prepared to do right now is humanitarian aid. Along with everything we're going to do to try to end the war, we are a country of plenty. And we need to be present in the Ukraine, in the surrounding countries, to support the refugees. Iowa has a great history of supporting refugees under Robert Ray, and we should be absolutely opening up our state to as many Ukrainian refugees as necessary. I also believe that this is a time to remind ourselves of the importance of January 6th. Not January 6, 2001, January 6, 1941, which is when FDR proposed the 4 freedoms upon which we have built NATO and upon which we built the UN. And those 4 freedoms were the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, but freedom from want. And that's what we're talking about having to address with those refugees at this time. And the final freedom was freedom from fear. And that's freedoms for every country in this planet. Freedom from the fear that another country is going to use military might to overcome us. And what he was talking about was disarmament. And we need to begin strengthening those relationships through NATO, strengthening our relationships in the Southeast Asia, and moving our world towards a place where we don't worry about tactical nuclear weapons. To address it in the Ukraine right now, our key action should really be providing military assistance in the form of equipment and weapons so that the Ukrainians can fight their battle. That has to do with our relationship with NATO and what we commit ourselves to, and we're committing others to as well. So that's where I would start.
Hey, thanks a lot, Glenn. Let's go to Abby.
Well, thank you. And I am now in a different location. Can you hear me okay? Everything's good?
That's good.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So much has just been said, but I want to start with this. I've been watching, as all of you've been watching, whether you're watching CNN, whatever it is, the images coming out of Ukraine are absolutely heartbreaking. The war crimes that Putin is committing and has committed are absolutely inexcusable, and he absolutely must be held accountable. The other thing I will say is this. As I'm watching, again, these images, as you all have, I also have seen hope and inspiration, as you've seen people step up for their country and in their democracy in a way that makes you realize how much we have to fight for here in the United States of America and what we cannot take for granted. And I will say this as well. You look, again, a lot has been said, but I think one of the most important things we need to be looking at now, but also in the future, is our relationships with our European allies, with making sure that they are strong, with making sure that we are fully funding our State Department and diplomacy, which is incredibly important. And by the way, something that the Trump administration, one of the first things he did when he got in office was having a hiring freeze in the State Department. That should never have happened. And the rebuilding has took a bit, but I will say this, the sanctions that have been put on, we absolutely should have done them. However, I also want to say, I think it is important to note, seeing other European allies like Germany in particular step up with sanctions themselves, that's extraordinary. That is something where that is rebuilding and building those relationships again that had been strained over the last 4 years. That's something worth noting, but it's also something why we have to continue on the diplomacy route and actually be strong in the region. And that, again, is, as a US Senator, would be something I would be putting a very, very high priority on in any matters when it comes to world affairs or international relations.
Hey, thank you, Abby. Our next question, we'll start with Glenn Hurst, and we'll take this question from Emily Silliman. Go ahead, Emily.
Thank you. Good evening. The November election, I'm concerned, will be relatively low turnout because it's an off-year election. And some of you have already partially addressed this, but if you could address how your campaign will motivate the Democratic base to get out and vote.
So motivating the Democratic base is broader than just Democrats within the Democratic Party. We have bled Democrats from this party because we haven't been giving them candidates that they feel are going to do anything different than what the Republicans will be doing in the US government. So it's incredibly important that we deliver a right kind of message that motivates those Democrats. That's a progressive message. Those are the people we have lost from the party. We've given plenty of candidates who are able to reach across the line, and that's a matter of personality and style, being able to reach across the aisle and talk with other Republicans. I absolutely am an easy person to get along with, and I'll do just fine being able to speak with Republicans. But I will not moderate my values as when I get to Washington, D.C. I will be the candidate that pushes for Medicare for all. I will be the candidate that addresses climate through the Green New Deal. I think that is how we inspire people to get out and join us. Look, money isn't the issue right now. If any one of us could raise $30 million today, that would answer the question of who has enough money to win this race. $30 million is what it's going to take to saturate the markets for advertising in this state. Teresa Greenfield raised $54 million, but still wasn't able to cross the finish line. $30 million comes after somebody wins the primary, and we've identified ourselves as the candidates who can actually beat a Republican candidate. I believe you have to have a candidate that comes from a position that is polar opposite of Chuck Grassley, not like the old Chuck Grassley, not similar to Chuck Grassley, not who would vote the same way that Chuck Grassley has voted on things like the Build Back Better bill, but somebody who is a indeed unique contrast to that candidate. That's what's going to win. That's what's going to motivate Democrats in November.
Hey, thank you, Glenn. Let's go on to Abby.
Well, thank you. Look, this is one of the things we have to get right. It is the same thing, quite frankly, we got right in 2018. We got out there, we talked to people face to face. We were in small towns and bigger cities because we could be, because that's the work that actually takes to not just win Democrats in this state, but to win everybody, to win our no party voters, and to also talk to Republicans who are looking at this state, and also Senator Chuck Grassley, and going, that is not the guy I remember growing up watching and seeing all of these years. I mean, I'll tell you this, we go around the state and we're, again, smaller towns, bigger cities, we've joked we should set up a former Grassley voter confessional because of how many people raise their hand that they used to vote for the guy and they never will again. But there's actually 3 different groups that I know nationwide people are talking about being worried, are Democrats going to be able to turn them out? One, are working class men and women who bust their tails every single day for their families and have seen their government leave them behind. That's my family. Those are the folks I have fought for my entire life, my entire career. And again, why I am doing this. It is why we have the union support that we have. It is why, again, I have fought for the bills that I have, whether it's protecting Made in America, prevailing wage, you name it. The other piece, they're worried about our suburban moms and folks who live, again, in suburbia and the base that came out in 18, who right now are going, what is happening? Who am I excited about? Look, when it comes to women's right to choose and the freedom for our own health care, that is something that unfortunately I have had too much time actually standing up on the floor of the Iowa House defending. And what a world if folks know that they can replace Senator Grassley, somebody who has spent his whole career trying to dismantle Roe v. Wade, with a young woman who is going to stand up and fight for their freedoms every single day. The other piece are young people. See, the ones who left, we got to bring them back home, but the ones who are here on our college campuses, we better be talking to them. It is why we've hired already campus organizers. We have a robust internship, paid internship, I might add, program across the state where we are talking to our young people, where we are getting them excited and turning them out. And quite frankly, making this race, because it is about the future of our state and our country. And in that regard, the contrast between Senator Grassley and I is pretty stark.
Hey, thank you, Abby. We'll go on to Admiral Mike Franken.
Hi, thank you. That is the key. If I could make some comparisons, I would say we will have the ground campaign of Pete Buttigieg. We have the funding campaign, the funding trends of a Bernie Sanders. A new donor every little less than 3 minutes now. No corporate PAC money or anything like that. And yet we've outraised Chuck Grassley and we'll be able to stay on the airwaves and on radio, on billboards, in print media, which such things as City Magazine, et cetera, now already going all the way through the general election. Our issue is to make sure that our name is on the tip of everyone's tongue. And the best volunteerism means that, very similar to early on in this campaign with just 2 staffers, we came up with 7,200 petitions, all done by a series of county commanders out there who went out and sent this treasure trove of petitions in with very little action from the central office. That's the type of volunteerism that we have, and we will continue through to the primary. I'm speaking to you from the college campus of Grinnell tonight. I'm a science person, an engineer, a physicist. Environmentalism is key to my future and the bills I would introduce. This is how you energize the young people of America. And we're doing that on the college campus of Grinnell tonight. I believe that we will have a turnout that will surprise the rest of the nation. And ultimately, in doing so, we will have both the independents who will show up and a record-setting group of Democrats to win in a high fashion across the board in Iowa. Thanks very much.
Hey, thanks a lot, Mike. We'll go to our next question, and we'll start with Abby. Our question will come from Leslie Carpenter.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My question is, what would you be doing in the future as a senator for the United States from Iowa about the humanitarian crisis that's happening right here in our country? We have 4.2 million people living with serious brain illnesses like schizophrenia who are untreated. They're ending up in our prisons, on our streets, and in our graveyards. This is a huge crisis that way too few people know about and even fewer people care about. I'd like to know your specific policy solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is something that I care deeply about. In fact, when I ran for Congress, one of the most impactful conversations I had was actually with the sheriff of Lynn County, who when I sat down with him and I asked, what keeps you up at night? He looks at me and he says, Abby, I give out these medals, you know, as a thing to my deputies who save somebody's life. And he goes, most people think when I'm handing out these medals, and we've handed out quite a few, that it's because, you know, they saved somebody in a car accident. But the reality is the majority he sends out is because they are stopping inmates from committing suicide. And he said, Abby, it is the mental health crisis, but also our opioid epidemic that go hand in hand here. And that, again, because of the lack of funding that we've seen on the state, closures of our mental health institutes, you name it, and also having the least amount of beds in the country per capita, it's absolutely absurd. And it's something that I went to work on while I was in Congress. In fact, it is why I fought tooth and nail to fully fund our community health centers. But by the way, that's not just where it ends here. When it comes to what just happened during the COVID pandemic and what now not only our adults are dealing with, but also our children. And the fact that I sat down with a principal actually in Iowa City who said the amount of need right now of our kids, the anger that they have, we need to have mental health professionals in our schools, every single one. That is something I'm committed to getting done. And here's the thing, because of the fact that on the federal level, you can fund all of this, right? You can send it to the states, but if you've got a governor who's not willing to actually allocate it where it belongs, like, for example, that 90 million she got when it came to COVID relief for our schools, which could have went towards mental health. You have to have a backstop to make sure that you can't have a governor who just uses throwing the 90 million away for a Fox News hit. And so that's something that I would be looking at in literally every piece of legislation that I do when it comes to how it gets to our communities. There has to be a backstop, whether it's our school districts, whether it's the health centers, whatever it is, to be able to get these dollars, even if our governor refuses to do her job and use them. And so that's one of the biggest things I just want you to know that I'm thinking about every single day when it comes to these issues, because we do pass, you know, great amount of funding. We do all of these great programs, but if they are not implemented within the state or through the state, it doesn't get out to the people who need it most. And that is something that I am committed to fixing, and quite frankly, part of my unfinished business in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Abby. We'll move on to Michael Franken.
Yes, mental illness. So my wife and I cared for a woman for 26 years through moving across the continent many times, including living overseas. The rotation of going off the medicines, et cetera, reestablishing new healthcare, being kicked out of one state, et cetera. It's a sorry, terrible tale of woe. Every county sheriff I speak with, I get the same response. 60% of the men in incarceration are there because of mental issues. 40% of the women are there. We have substituted what was genuinely a well-intentioned policy with various statutes, first during the Carter years, which then became something which I think we rode wrongly. We need to reevaluate this nation's statute as it comes to mental illness, both inpatient and outpatient care. And aspects of this also has to be on the way we treat pharmaceuticals in this country. This is a very detailed issue. I know, unfortunately, a lot about it by experience. And what we should also do, and go back to the military healthcare. We, of course, have mental illness in the military. We are screened for such, and we are treated thoroughly. This ought to be the standard bearer for every American. We need not look any further for a program that works. The military does it exceedingly well. It is a birthright, and everybody is deserving. I shall endeavor to institute that single type pay health system from cradle to grave, including palliative care, that every American deserves. And that certainly includes dental and mental health care. Thanks for the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Mike. We'll move on to Glenn.
This is a great question. It's a huge, huge issue. It's a very personal issue in my family. My son, who is 30 years old now, became my son through a guardianship when he was 9 years old. And he came with the baggage of a troubled life. And we've struggled with him, and you know, there's times that he's on base and then he's off base, and he's on base and he's off base, and all of these great things that I'm hearing, these proposals to address mental health care in this silo or in this silo are all great and well intentioned. But I say this over and over again, and I'm not trying to be flippant. We're talking about putting Band-Aids on a cannonball wound. And that's just not how you fix a cannonball wound. The cannonball wound is the complete breakdown of our healthcare system in this nation. You asked for specific policy. The specific policy that needs to be addressed is Medicare for all. This would take vision, dental, hearing, mental health care, or as I prefer to refer to it, brain chemistry care. We don't take bone chemistry out of our body and have like a bone health system, or hearts out in a heart health system. This is just the brain chemistry. It belongs in health care. So the brain chemistry system, we take vision, dental, hearing, long-term care for people with disabilities who are able to live at home but need additional support, like my friend Garrett, who I just got to visit with yesterday. People who need additional opportunities for all different healthcare problems. So many of us are falling through the cracks. It's not just mental health care. It is every part of the healthcare system. So I would suggest that we pass the Medicare for All Act. This puts every person in this nation in a position to receive healthcare from any provider in this nation. It gives us the opportunity to increase the workforce of social workers, healthcare workers that are not just physicians, but nurses, therapists, talk therapists, all of these licensed mental health professionals, all of these services that can do so much if we give them the opportunity to be creative. And the Medicare for All system gives us the opportunity to train those people, to put them where people need them the most, and to allow them to be creative in helping them.
Hey, thanks a lot, Glenn. We'll start. I guess we'll move on to, no, I guess we're going to start with Mike Franken on the next question. And we'll take that from the chat. What will it take to eliminate oil company subsidies? It seems impossible to counter the weight of all that money.
Well, you know, up until a couple of years ago, we were giving humanitarian aid to China. So there's a number of programs which are too stupid for words in the federal government. We can do something about it. It's not going to be done under a Republican administration. Certainly the Republican administration, what my farmer friends in Northwest Iowa will tell me is, Franken, we need you as a senator because we can't have any of the legislation introduced which runs counter to big oil by our two Republican senators. So please, please, please get elected. Of course, that's the end of the conversation because I'm a Democrat after all. But this is doable. There are, you know, it's just not direct profferings to oil companies. There are a series of indirects. There are cut rate exploration deals that are given, 9,000 of which have not been acted upon. The oil companies, just so you know, they have never raked in such huge profits as they're doing today. They are taking advantage of the consumer. It is an atrocity. The best thing to do as a senator is to transparent, as in illuminate the situation as it exists today, demand it, and finger point those who are on the Republican side and Democrat side who hide those the real issues of the day. I shall be a rather loudmouth when it comes to such matters. I owe no one except for the Iowa voter. And I work to achieve that, and I will certainly be that loud voice, that strong jaw that will speak truth to power. Having voted against going to war, I will certainly vote against big oil on matters such as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. On to Glenn.
I think of the oil lobby and the healthcare lobby, the pharmaceutical lobby, all of these well financed lobbies, and the influence that they have had over our senators and our congresspeople. And I think of them the same way I think of drug reps in my office. The way I have approached drug reps in my office is they're not allowed in. You don't get access to me because you represent a drug that I might be prescribing. There are plenty of great resources for me as a physician to learn about your drug. And that's the very same with regards to energy policy and with regards to Medicare for all and foreign policy. We don't need to be allowing people that are going to profit from the decisions that we make as your representatives into our office. I don't have a single drug rep pen, clock, paperweight, etc. in my office. I defy you to find anything. And it's because that's my character. That's not going to be allowed. The very same policy is how I will work with lobbyists in Washington, D.C., especially the oil lobbyists. Look, we know in Iowa, the carbon pipelines are a bad idea for our state. They do not produce a single benefit in terms of controlling carbon release into our environment. As a matter of fact, their purpose is to pump more oil out of the ground using carbon so that we can burn that oil and cause more carbon. This is insanity. We've got to stop allowing these big dollars to influence us. And so the way we really address this problem is we address campaign finance reform. We take Citizens United and we dismiss it by US law. And we take our election process and we make it a government funded process, and we set limits on the amount of money that can be spent. This is not supposed to be a corporation. This is supposed to be about representing Americans. And that's what I'll do in Washington.
Hey, thanks, Glenn. On to Abby.
Thanks for this important question. Look, taking on big oil was one of the reasons I knew really early on they were coming for me, because of the fact I was not afraid to stand up on the House floor and take them on in a way that, quite frankly, they haven't really been used to, even by Democrats. Look, when it came to even the small refinery waivers that they were asking the Trump administration to get rid of when it comes to even blending ethanol, it was absurd what they were getting away with. I mean, you want to talk about a small refinery? You have Valero and some of these other large Exxon, right? Pretending like they're small, trying to get rid of these waivers to not have to blend ethanol. It was extraordinary what they were doing, and also how they were doing it. And I had enough of it. I was grossed out by their tactics they were taking. And so one of the things I did at the beginning of 2017 was actually launch an investigation into these companies and why they were doing what they were doing. And this is something I would continue to do. You have, again, too many people in Washington, D.C., with too much influence, who've been sitting there for decades, like Senator Grassley, by the way, who has watched all of this happen. He's been sitting there cozy for nearly 5 decades, taking their money and screwing over, quite frankly, lack of a better way to say it, Iowans in this state and people across the country. And the other piece of this, we have to deal with it, because we also have to deal with climate change, as I like to call it now, climate chaos. I mean, I represented, obviously, the city of Cedar Rapids, the surrounding areas, when we got hit with what was basically a Category 4 inland hurricane, the derecho, which, again, was devastating all across the city, all across the surrounding areas. And again, didn't just impact 1 million acres of corn. It also left people without electricity, some for 3 weeks, my husband and I for 2. The fact, again, that this can't be taken more seriously is absolutely absurd. And it is why, again, I have done the work that I've done. It's why I will continue the work that I do, calling out the bull as I see it, calling out the big corporations who jack up the prices, by the way, right now. They're having record profits, yet our gas is skyrocketing because of what they're able to do. It shouldn't be happening this way. And you have my word. Many of you on this call know me. You know who I am. You know what I fight for. And I have a record for it as well. And that's what I'll continue to do in the United States Senate.
Hey, thanks, Abby. We'll go on over to Mike.
I believe I have already answered the question.
Oh, did I mess this up? Oh,
That's
no.
okay. It's all good.
Are we all done? Or Glenn, have you had a chance?
Okay.
No, that was all of us.
Okay. So with that
So-
said,
And
I'll turn it over to Roseanne.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, I think we're ready to go to closing statements. We asked each of you to take about a minute to make a closing statement. And Mike, since you're on, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure, happy to.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for doing this, Ed, and everyone. You're very pleased. It's fabulous. Johnson County, over 100 people online tonight. That's the type of engagement we will need across Iowa. I'm a Northwest Iowa person. I live in Sioux City. It's often said, Franken, that's a great place to live because you can attack in every direction. I plan on doing that. Ultimately, what we'll need to do is turn back the Republican gains west of 35. This is my 5th day on the road. And, we talked about singing. I could say 5 days on the road and I'm going to be home tonight. So there you go. I will be home tonight after 5 days in a different bed each place. This is what it takes. We are on the road to victory plan. I spend just a couple days in the office and the rest of the time traveling around. In Iowa, you've got to engage with the voter. And my campaign strategy is now resorted to this: knock on every Democrat's door once, Republican door twice, independent thrice. And that's the plan. Please bring your independent friends to see us, to talk to us, etc. We are going to win this going away. That's the plan. And we're on an exit plan to execute that above the bar. Thank you much.
Thank you, Mike. Glenn, your closing statement?
Thank you, everyone, Potluck Insurgency, for this fantastic opportunity. Albert Einstein said it best: repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity. We have repeated this process of putting moderate Democrats in front of our vulnerable Republicans over and over and over again, and the result has been the same. It is time to put forward a candidate in the likes of Tom Harkin, who delivered the American with Disabilities Act, a candidate who is progressive, who believes that Medicare for all is the tool for our nation's healthcare, who believes that the Green New Deal is the way to address the climate crisis in this nation. I am that candidate. I look forward to talking to you more about all of those policies and how we can bring this country forward. And I look forward to crossing the victory line for you in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. And Abby.
Well, yes, I would just like to say thank you again to Potluck Insurgency and for all that you do, not just right now for the U.S. Senate candidates and hosting this, but for all you do for these state House and state Senate candidates across the state. I have to say, I remember back in 2016 as I was watching what happened and wondering, who are we as Iowans anymore after somebody who did not share our values was elected president? And I know folks on this call, you all worried about our future, about where we were headed. And in 2017, as you stood up and said, not in my state, not in my country, so did I. And I knew then that we had so much to fight for here. And as much as people wanted to say, oh, Democrats can't win, oh gosh, we can't beat somebody like Rod Blum who just gotten reelected by 8 points, I knew better. Because I knew Iowa and I love this state. And off we went and we talked to each other. We did that work. That is the work we are doing right now in 2020. It is the work that in 2018, where we flipped the congressional seat. And folks, We overperformed our Democratic nominee for governor that year by 4 percentage points. And we've been the only federal Democrat to win Dubuque County, essential to winning statewide, since 2014. We have to talk to people again. We have to remind them of who we are. It is why we are out there. It is why we are doing the work that we are and reminding Iowans of our values and what it is we are fighting for. But here's the thing. We are right on the policy. We all are. We work hard here. We're talking about paid leave. We're talking about childcare. We're talking about the prescription drugs, things that show up in such a big way. But if we aren't doing the work, reaching people where they are, what does it matter? Right? And so we are building something that has never been done here before. If you are on Facebook, look, 74% of Iowans are on Facebook. We need you, we want you, and we are organizing in a way that is basically Obama House Party style model back in 2008, but bringing it on digital. We are having people talk to their friends because that is what it's going to take. People don't know what to believe or trust anymore, and we have to run different campaigns to reach them. That is what I am committed to doing because Iowa is my home. This country means everything to me. I am a granddaughter of a World War II vet, a great niece of a Bronze Star winner who, heck, great Uncle George liberated literally Nazi concentration camps. And I thought to myself, with those two men who had the last name Finkenauer on their uniforms, they could go do what they did. And George in particular, seeing some of the worst you could imagine, and come back and love this country, love democracy and fight like hell for it. The least that their granddaughter and their great niece can do is get up and keep fighting for it every single day because we know we can win. We know we can do this. The contrast between Grassley and I is pretty stark, and we are going to be able to win folks and pull them out in a way that he has never seen before in his entire career. But again, we need you with us, and folks, we need to win. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks again to all of you. I'm going to turn this over to Jane in just a moment, but I wanted to remind you that we did record this tonight. Potluck does have a YouTube channel, and as soon as I get the link to the recording on YouTube, I will send it to all of you on our mailing list. So again, if you want to jump on the mailing list, let me know. Thank you. This has been fabulous. Those of you who are here, be sure and share this with others who have the same tough decision to make when we vote that primary ballot in June. And I think this has been an invaluable forum. So thank you so much. And now over to Jane for a closing message. Thank you, Jane.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank our distinguished guests for taking the time out of their schedule to be with us. Admiral Mike Franken, Abby Finkenauer, and Dr. Glenn Hurst. This has been fantastic. And I'm just so impressed with all of you. I've never seen such a really impressive slate of candidates for running in Iowa. This is really enjoyed tonight. I want to thank our steering committee of the Potluck Insurgency for planning this event. Ed Cranston, Roseanne Cook, Janice Weiner, Sarah Prinius, Emily Silliman, and Jackie Blank. And importantly, I want to thank all the 113 people, that was the highest number I saw, who attended this event. This is by far our highest number, so we're excited about that. We just had a fabulous turnout. I'm still admitting people, oddly enough. The next Potluck Insurgency event will be a fundraiser for Janice Weiner, who is one of our founding members. She is running for the Iowa State Senate District 45, currently held by State Senator Joe Bokum. The fundraiser will be May 22nd at 4 o'clock and will be in person. We'll let you know the location soon. So thank you all so much for coming out. It's just been a wonderful opportunity, I think, to be together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Hi, thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks for a great event.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Bye, Ed. Bye, Admiral.
Bye, sir.